It's working. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for your patience. Now you'll be able to have some pictures to look at. Yes, what? You don't. All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda, we're going to have roll call. Please, Shelby.
Jim Drew.
Here.
Daryl Whitmer.
Here.
Deb Lawrence.
Here.
Holly Rickard.
Here.
Emily Kirchner. Here. Jill Tabor. Tim Dooley.
Here.
Steve Thomas.
Here.
Dennis Menking.
Here. All right, thank you. We're going to go to item number 4, which is public comments. We'll take this time to take public comments from anyone who would like to make comments about any item that's on the agenda or not. We would like for you to keep those comments to 3 minutes. Mr. Jim is going to be keeping that time. So anyone would like to make comments, now would be your time to come forward to the podium up here.
Hello. My name is Michael Meek. I own 3 properties on Post Oak Road, I guess that are being considered for involuntary annexation under their title that the MD Gathering Holdings. And I own 632 Post Oak Road, 638 Post Oak Road, and 639 Post Oak Road. And so we've lived in Fredericksburg since 2009 and built in Hill Country longer than that. And so we have rental properties, and my understanding is being presented as C1 for those properties, which will work for us with our current existing use. The 638 and 632, and then 639, which is on the east side of Post Oak. We just purchased it in March with plans to kind of expand our business with some more lodging, short-term rental lodging, possibly some long-term rental lodging for some of our employees, and also some office space. And so I just wanted to say that I would like to have C1 zoning, which I think that is what's being presented as far as my understanding, which we're fine with that. And that's going to allow us to continue with the development and with our business plan. Initially, there was some discussion, well, it was going to be R1 or R2, which would have impacted our business plan. We've already started construction and demo an existing house. I've been on the edge of engaging an architect 3 different times because we weren't sure where we were going to land, but we didn't want to spend money on architectural plans and designing and finish out for a use that would be maybe in conflict with what the zoning was going to be. But with the zoning and then also with the development next door, it looks like we'll be able to use city services, and that'll help us continue to help us with that. The other thing I just wanted to say, I don't know that it particularly relates to zoning. I have my daughter-in-law with me, Sydney. She grew up here, and my son, she works in my business, our hospitality business. My son Joseph also works in our business full-time. We have 2 other full-time property people working for us. And I just wanted to say there's a lot of younger people that are moving back to this community, and the tourism industry and the development on that side is creating a lot of jobs that that's a real benefit that we can see our young people have opportunities and careers to come move back to this community and build homes and serve here. So anyway, thank you for the time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wanted to make any comments? Is there anybody online? All right, thank you. And we will go on to the public hearings. We have several public hearings this evening. We're going to start with item number 5A, request Z2102 by the City of Fredericksburg to consider 1, an involuntary annexation for approximately 82.36 acres of land generally located on the west and east sides of Post Oak Road from West Live Oak to 2,800 feet north of South Bowie Street. This involuntary annexation will not increase or extend the city's ETJ. And 2, future land use changes from rural residential, low-density residential, parks, and open space commercial to low-density residential, medium-density residential for approximately 82.36 acres of land generally located on the west and east sides of Post Oak Road from West Live Oak to 2,800 feet north of South Bowie Street. And 3, proposed zoning of single-family residential, mixed residential, and neighborhood commercial for approximately 82.36 acres of land generally located on the west and east sides of Post Oak Road from West Live Oak to 2,800 feet north of South Bowie Street. I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
A motion by Tim, a second by Jim. Do I have any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Jason, are you going to be giving a presentation?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. Good evening. This is here, there's 3 items under consideration. One is the annexation itself. One is the future land use change, which has to be done prior to the establishment of zoning. As these properties are coming into the city, that is one of the things that we're looking at. So if you recall, we brought this to you several meetings ago to discuss possible land uses and zoning. At the time, staff was recommending just to come in under the future land use plan to kind of keep it a little simpler. But y'all had made the comments that generally the practice had been to bring them in under their current use so as not to create any non-conforming uses. So what we did was we went back through, I've had some conversations with Mr. Meek. We looked at his property, I've talked to other couple of landowners, and then what we tried to do was find something that matches. So what we see here is the proposed zoning map for the property. What we're showing is C1. Where my cursor is, this property, and this small one here is Mr. Meek's property. This area, the future land use plan lines up. That is called for commercial anyways. The only difference would be this small area here, but he is under construction and working towards the office. Again, C1 is not full of noxious uses. It's generally either some type of service or office use, so it matches up well with what else is in the area. This little hole here, if you see, that was already annexed. We haven't updated the map, but that was the R1A. There's going to be about 40 lots there, so a residential subdivision. The other areas that we're proposing commercial for are along the Bowie and Post Oak Road and then the South Cherry Street extension. This is going to, once that road is put in, this is going to create a hard corner, so it makes a little more sense for some commercial in the area. Again, this is a neighborhood commercial. This isn't full-blown hotels, bars, restaurants, anything like that. So we feel comfortable with that. Everything else we left as R1, and then we did have some R2 in there just because we're always in need for additional housing, and this gives us an opportunity to give some more density. So before we can get into that zoning, we need to look at the future land use plan and see what that tells us. So currently, the future land use called for all of that northern area to be low-density residential, except for the portion that's commercial around the school. But since, like I said, it's a hard corner and there's some commercial there, we feel comfortable moving forward with the C1, and that's why we're showing the change from low-density residential to commercial. In the other areas, we had some medium-density residential, so those R2 matches up. And then there's a quirky little deal along our creeks where we have open space, so we need to change those classifications as well. So we think this will provide some benefits to the landowners that are coming in that can continue their uses. The zoning will match up and shouldn't cause any areas where we have incompatible uses next to each other. And then the other change here was these 2 lots. You can see those owners were requesting commercial also because they front some commercial, so that makes sense as well. We don't see any issues with that. So I can answer any specific questions you may have, but I'll go ahead and turn it back to you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who'd like to make comments on this public? Yes. Okay, please come up to the podium, sir.
So I was just kind of curious. My name is Bob Peterson. I have a property at 604 Fulton Street, which is right here. didn't come to object, I just wanted to get a little more definition of what the usage of that property adjacent to me would be. So right now, it's, obviously, I've got a nice property, I've got woods behind me, and it was low-density residential per the gentleman's previous comment, and now it's C1. So can you go into further definition of C1? Does that mean I'm going to have a 7-Eleven right behind me, or, you know, what's going to be at the back end of my property line? Currently, it's a little creek and it's some woods, and I'd like.
Yeah, sure. So C1 is generally things like personal services, so a nail salon, a bookstore. It allows some small limited retail, but it doesn't allow gas stations in those areas. However, this is a zoning map. What you're talking about as your future land use, what it shows, low density residential. Currently, there is no zoning on that tract behind you, so if 7-Eleven came today to start building, they wouldn't even need approvals because it's not in the city limits. So the proposed zoning would give you a little bit more protection being in the city, or that property being in the city, than what you would see now. But generally, neighborhood commercial is defined as services or commercial that service the neighborhood. So no hotels, no motels would be.
But it could still be a strip center with various businesses operating.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There is some floodplain on that property. I haven't seen a flood study to see where that line falls. You know, again, this is staff's recommendation on the commercial. So if y'all feel that y'all have some concerns, you do have the authority to go to a classification lower than that. So it's just given the hard corner with the school across. That's why we kind of kept that whole area in the same zoning classification.
So what would be the process then for me or anyone else that's adjacent to that property to object to saying, I'd rather have that being low-density residential than a commercial establishment?
You're doing it right now. This is the process. So you would just let them know that you'd like to protest that or make a requested change, and they will note that.
All right, and I would like to note that I would prefer that if it goes into the city to remain as low-density residential. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to make comments?
Move to public hearing back in the regular session. Second.
I have a motion by Tim, I have a second by Jim. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, any other comments, Jim? All right.
I have a question for Jason. I've had somebody in the general public ask me how it is that we can involuntarily annex stuff, particularly like this, because they recall hearing some time ago that cities were not allowed to annex property.
Correct. So Daniel will correct me if I get this wrong, which I may. When the state legislature made their change that changed the rules on how city can annex, they did provide a provision that if you had an annexation plan or you were planning on doing that, you could move forward under the old annexation regulations. So that is how we were able to move forward with this one.
Any other questions, comments?
Based on the gentleman's objection on that parcel right there near Fulton's, behind Fulton Street, what are the other options other than C? It looks like see that kind of parcel with that kick out to the right?
Is this your property here, sir? Can you see that on
Yes.
That is your property?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
What's on that street?
yeah.
So fairly large tract. So the options would be, right now, we're only going with medium density residential, low density, or commercial. So it would be the medium or the low, which would then translate to the R2 or the R1. This area here is mostly single family, even though it calls out future land use medium density. So I think either option would be compatible next to each other, whether it's single family or the R2.
That's one contiguous piece of property and one landowner. Has anybody heard from him whatsoever?
Sorry.
So there's somebody that Gary's. I think their last name is Gary. We have one home in there.
Right.
I think it's roughly 8 acres. And a good part of that is floodplain. And the high part would be directly across from the school and then up towards my fence line, where everything else is actually put there and shows some floodplain. The development would be effectively pushed up against my background property. My concern is what I'd rather it be something in the backyard.
Well, since we have a shortage of R2s,
R2 or R1, like I said, staff can support either. I mean, the future land use is low density, so if you want to just stay with the comp plan and feel comfortable with that, then we can go that route, and then that way that would give the owner his ability to, once he's in, he can come seek if he wants to go R2 or higher.
I'm inclined to go with R1 on that parcel because what's adjacent to it is R1. And then if somebody decides they want to develop in the future, they could come in and ask for a change.
And this is not spot zoning?
It's right next to R1.
Yeah, just as directly south of it, adjacent is also R1.
Okay,
So you can either extend R1 up or go C1.
thank you.
I mean,
Yeah.
so what is our task tonight? Are we accepting this? And we,
You'll have three motions that you'll need to make. One is a recommendation on the annexation, whether you think we should annex or not. Two would be the land use, the future land use. So either you can accept staff's recommendation with a change or two changes or however many changes you like. And then the third motion would be the zoning change presentation, again, based on staff's recommendation or whatever changes you made on the land use, but they do have to match.
So we're on action item number 6, A, B, and C. They're all three different.
So I do have a question about the parcel that is not included on the west side of Post Oak, closest to Live Oak, down at the southern end, right there.
Okay.
Has that already been annexed, or is it ag? What's the story?
That is, the rest of the parcel here, this is all one owner. They're okay with the annexation. They signed a non-annexation agreement for this parcel here, so we're just representing what they wanted out.
I just want to make sure it was covered one way or another.
Yes, ma'am.
anything from Smith all the way up.
Is also non-annexation.
Yes, if we are to take a straight line across here, these parcels, they signed those non-annexation agreements as well. Another area that I would just like to make note, this tract here, this R1, wasn't really necessary for this Cherry Street extension, but because to keep the clean line and we included it. We've had some conversations with Ms. King. She does not have an ag exemption. She doesn't want to be in the city limits at this time. Council did direct staff that we can work with her on offering her a non-annexation agreement as well. We have not proceeded that far, so you can make your recommendation, based on staff. She is R1 single family. And then prior to council, before we finalize everything, we'll know whether she's going to be signing that agreement or if there's something else will change.
So it's at her option at this point to either engage in one or allow it to come in as R1?
Yes.
Okay. As long as it should not be enforced, it's her option.
Yes, we extended, there's another gentleman here. He has not signed, but the agreement is still on the table, so they could both come back and sign those. So we're just kind of moving forward for time-wise. We need to keep moving forward on the process.
That's all my questions.
All right. Anybody else?
6 days. Jennifer, 6
Yes, 6A, 6B, and 6C are the three
Should
motions.
make that recommendation that one person come in as,
Correct, now being 6C.
it needs to come in on B and C, because B land use needs to be residential, not commercial.
Okay, I make a motion for B, 6A, and then 6B and 6C with the exception of that one parcel that being zoned into R1 versus C.
Residential.
And residential versus commercial.
Second.
I'm sorry, just verify, low density or medium density?
I think, let's go low, let's go low.
Low would match the
Somebody could-
R1.
Yeah, that way it matches and somebody can come in
They can
later.
always come back.
They can come back.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right.
Second.
That was Jim, Jim made those 3 motions, and a second by Tim. Does everybody understand the motion? Any other discussion?
You vote each one separate.
They need a separate vote.
Each one separate.
Just for a clarification, we have this extra map, so we would say property owner number 2 on that motion, just so we have that clarity on that.
Property owner number
Yes.
2.
Property number 2. Property owner number 2.
Second.
Do we need 3 separate votes, or?
Typically, for your land use change and your zoning change recommendations, we would want to vote on each of those independently.
Okay, let's vote on action item number 6A, which would be for the annexation. All in favor, aye? Aye. All opposed? All right, that motion carries. So we're going to vote on action item number 6B, which would be the land use. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Action item number 6C would be the zoning. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that motion carries. Right.
So is this possibly the last annexation we'll ever see? Is that voluntary? Well, you won't see that.
We'll see a lot of voluntary annexations moving forward. The development, the growth that we're seeing, and the need for water and sewer is going to, eventually most of these folks are going to want to come in. We've already had conversations with some of the folks down. If this fails, they're going to be in our office the day after that to ask. They're desperately needing some utilities at this point, so.
All right, let's go on action to, the public hearing 5B. Request Z2124 to consider proposed amendments to section 2.100 definitions and section 5.10 measurements of height to regulate how building height is defined and measured. I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make that motion to open the public hearing.
Motion by Jim, do I have a second?
I think Tim seconded.
Second by Tim, any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. All opposed? Oh, I was looking back there for you, Kyle. All right. Kyle, would you like to explain all this to us?
I will. My name is Kyle Stout, work for Development Service Department for the city of Fredericksburg. And as you all know, I know this has been brought to y'all before, but there is a discrepancy on how we measure height in our code. We're looking on cleaning that up, so there's no questions. Right now, with the definition of it, we take it from the grade to the highest point. That's section 2.1, and in section 7.5, we take an average. So there is, you can see by the picture up here, you can see where the average would be, and the top line would be from grade. So we want to just clean that up and just go with the definition, because that's how the building code also determines it. That way it's just clear and concise, and there's no questions. So if y'all have any questions, be happy to answer.
You said that's how the building code determines it.
Mhm.
Is the average of the grade to the highest point?
From grade.
To grade?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the building code has a couple of definitions depending on the roof type, but it's from grade, and then it matches our definition that says to the midpoint of the roof to the highest peak. It's the section that says how you measure that doesn't have that language, and it says to the highest point. So that came up on the SACO project, if you'll recall. So that's why I got with Kyle, just to make sure what we were doing in here matched the building code. So that's what we're doing. And I believe that's how you guys have interpreted that for the past 14 years. So
I think that's always been the intent.
right.
All right, is there anyone here who wants to make any comments?
Where grade again, is that it, many grades, many buildings have varying grades. Where would it be the highest grade or floor level grade?
I would assume, not assume, it would be from ground, from grade, not from highest.
Yeah, no, We actually define grade. There's another section in there that measures that. I believe it is the average of the four corners of the building footprint. Some cities do it on the lot. You take the average grade of the lot. Ours is the average grade of the building, so.
Can you do that during the approval process if you're not out there shooting elevations?
Well, we do that through the site plan, that's why we have.
That's percentage.
Yeah, so the engineer, the architect, that's what we have, require signed sealed plans because they're certifying that they've shot that. These are the topos. Sometimes do they change? They're a little off. I mean, yes, just moving dirt and you get a rain. I mean, it's not exact, and so that's why it's the average grade. So, depending on the site, I've dealt with this in my time in the hill country, that it can be quite a bit depending on how you turn your building, because it says the four corners. So I've seen situations where a building could increase by 10 feet just by rotating it 25 degrees. So pretty standard stuff. We just wanted to clean up the information so that we're consistent with how we do it on the building side as far as inspections.
Does that answer your question, Jim?
I'm not sure in the historic review board, it's a critical measurement for us, height. And I haven't really thought about it. It would be something that I would be interested in what the historic review feeling was on that. Because it is such a critical consideration for us in many of the things.
Well, this would probably match with what we've been doing over the history of our reviews. Everything that's been permitted and inspected has gone with our definition, which goes from the average grade to the midpoint of the roof. So that would be this line here. So anything we
We
approved.
normally go to the bridge.
Right. So midpoint is where we've been going as far as interpretations. If we need to get with Anna, we can do a little presentation.
Our consideration, probably the problem is our consideration is really what the height for it is. It's how it compares to adjoining structures.
Yeah, so the Historic Review Board, the Historic Guidelines, there are some discrepancies in what the zoning code allows as far as density and setbacks. The Historic Review Guidelines kind of trump those because they're more restrictive. So there's always a delicate balance when we review projects. There's several of them. You'll see, we've seen CUPs for like short-term rental complexes where they're allowed 8 units. The new guidelines don't, they require 25-foot separation on high-rated structures. And so physically, they may not get 8 units, even though the zoning code allows it. So we see that quite a bit.
I do have one question. In the code language you're putting in, you say the average height. Does that mean midpoint, or is somebody going to interpret those differently in the future?
No, as long as they're matching each section definition with measurement, then that clears up I can't say how someone will interpret it after me. I know when I got here, I obviously interpreted different than my predecessor, so.
Okay, thank you.
Well, how does it work then when you have a complicated roof line? It's okay when you have a simple straight gable roof. First one that comes to my mind, there's a house going up on Cherry Street. And that thing is the most complicated roof line or roof lines. It would make it hard to establish what the average is on that one.
So the way we do the averages is we take the highest point of that peak and that top wall plate. So you may have 4 or 5 roof lines that are different, but we look at it just as the plane of the two. So say on this image here, if there was another roof that popped out here and came down this way and another one that popped up here and came this way, we would say, okay, here's the highest point, this line, here's the lowest point, this line, wherever that midpoint is. That's kind of how we've been interpreting that average roof line, midpoint.
All right, anybody else have any other?
Jason, I have a question. So this is how it has been interpreted in the past. Is there any sort of notification that needs to go out? for anything like that? Just to, I know we're truing it up.
No, because I mean, at this point, anybody that's built anything in town or any architect, that's how they've been measuring it. Like I said, it really, when it came up, it was in my review of that Seiko project. I think that was my first project when I got on board with the city. I didn't look at the definition because I saw how to measure it. So that's where I went, and that's why I came up with a discussion on, hey, this is going to be that max height. So for anybody that's been doing any kind of work in the city, this is going to continue on and would affect them. And then obviously anybody new, they won't know. They'll ask us and we'll point to that. So.
All right, any other comments from the public? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close.
Motion by Jim, second by Tim. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Let's go to action item. Make sure I get the right one. Action item number 6D, discuss consideration and recommendation regarding request Z2124. Anybody have any other comments or questions on this one?
No, I'll make a motion. Yep. Make a motion to approve
Okay.
as presented. To
Right.
make corrections and amend section 7.5.
All right, have a motion by Jim. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Ellen. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
I practiced.
Daryl's been quiet. All right, let's move on to the next public hearing, which is public hearing 5C, request Z2125 by Kevin Spraggins to consider, one, a future land use change from low density residential to a future land use classification of commercial for approximately 9.754 acres of land described as ABS A0180 GDE Brandt number A42, 60.715 acres farm located at 162 Homig Lane. And two, a zoning change from single-family residential to zoning classification of neighborhood commercial for approximately 9.754 acres of land described as ABS A0180 GDE Brandt number A42, 60.751 acres farm located at 162 Homemade Lane. Entertain a motion to open the public hearing. A motion by Jim. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Daryl. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, Mr. Spraggins, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Kevin Spraggins, VEI Consulting Engineers. And tonight, this item is a zoning change request and land use change request off of Friendship Lane on the west side, just west of Homig Lane. We are looking at doing a multifamily development on both those tracks. You can see the site plan there. On the right side, you're looking at standard multifamily, the closest to Homig. And as you go to the west, we're looking at doing a senior living on the items on the 9.754 acre tract that we're talking about tonight. So we do have a site plan in as well. We submitted that on Monday, and so the plan is to move forward next month with the site plan approval for this tract. But not to get too far ahead of myself, currently, as you can see on the plan, the existing zoning, the 9 acres is zone C1. So whenever we sat down with staff and we looked at it and we said, okay, what do we want to do? Staff said it was the general consensus that we would just extend the C1 zoning, move on. You can do multifamily in C1, it's all together and it makes sense, that's fine. So after Jason and them looked at it and had additional time to review it, you can see the recommendation that you have in front of you this evening, and that's for an R3 zoning instead of the C1, which is fine. we don't have a problem with that. It still fits the senior living that they want to do, and so we are fine with that recommendation. I just wanted to let y'all know how we got, why you see C1 in front of you now, and how we started this whole conversation. But to have a recommendation for R3 still fits the criteria and the density and the impervious cover and all that they want to do. And so we're happy with the recommendation and would ask for approval.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Is there anyone here who want to make any comments on this application?
A developer is also here to answer any questions if y'all have any.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to close. A motion by Jim. Do I have a second? Second. A second by Emily. Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. All opposed? All right, then let's go to action item number 6E and 6F, discussion, consideration and recommendation regarding request in C 2125. So, yes, sir, Jason.
I just piggyback off of Kevin's presentation there. So I'll talk zoning first, since obviously that's the intent that's going to trigger the land use change. When we did look at that, Kevin's right, we didn't have a lot of concern. There's a C1 in the area. We looked at it as an extension. As we started talking about it more, staff, after we did the legal notice, we did see quite a bit. That's a large acreage tract. It would bisect these two single-family zoned residential neighborhoods. We had no issue with the multifamily project. It's a product that we need in the community. So staff did change their recommendation, and I'll be more clear on R3. The C1 points to the development standards of R3, so really there's no difference other than land uses. What the R3 zoning allows is it allows a developer to do their development, and it provides the city some protection that if something should happen and they don't move forward on the project, we don't have a large, big chunk of commercial area bisecting those two. Again, we could have supported the C1 because, as I said earlier, there's not a lot of noxious uses in that zoning district, but we just felt it would fit better if we went with the R3, since that's going to be the development standards that it would be built to. So that's why you'll see the recommendation for high-density residential on the future land use map. And so currently it's low-density residential, but again, for the area and for the product, we all know, we SBC that the change in development along Friendship Lane, and it's probably the last area with access and utilities that's undeveloped. So that's why we've seen a lot of movement along that corridor there.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have comments, questions?
No, my question was going to be on R2 versus R3, but you clarified it. You're asking for R3.
Yes, ma'am. That would match the C1.
Y'all are comfortable with R3?
Correct, because like you said, C1 falls back to R3 anyway, so it's one half dozen or the other.
How far away is this from the new middle school?
Right across the street. If you see the brown, the two different browns, that's a commercial in R3 as well, which is now going to be the new middle school track.
And I just want to, just for the record, possibly the new middle school track. That's not set in stone. I just want to, it's just, so we don't start getting a bunch of phone calls tomorrow.
The school owns the property. What they do with it. Is Dove Crossing what the Penix had, the R1A right there in that loop?
You're right, that correctly. I don't know if it included all of this.
It's right there it's the green.
Correct.
And that's another question I had. If it's R1A, then I guess, I don't know if that's considered medium or still low. I don't know, but.
Or are they still considered low, right?
Yes, it's a low.
So there you go.
And so are y'all saying that this section here was actually changed to R1A, or was it just a proposal?
Yeah, correct. I thought so too.
I thought we voted on that to be R1A.
Well, I'll do some research, just to, it may be that the zoning map didn't get updated, so I just want to make some notes so that I can go back and update that if we need to.
You know what, so here, it's still.
I mean,
R1.
No? Okay. Maybe we did. I think what you remember is the preliminary plat that was approved. And there was talk about R1A versus R1, but the preliminary plat came in under the R1.
Any other questions, comments? We have two motions, one for the land use and one for the zoning. Z 2125, item 1 is the land use and item 2 is the zoning change.
Make a motion to approve Z 2125. Do we have to do A and B separately?
we
Yes.
have to change it because the request is for commercial and for the high density residential.
That's it.
Yeah, we want to go to that first.
That recommendation.
Yeah, staff recommendation had an option, so we go with, if you're leaning towards the R3, then for the land use, it would be that HDR would need to be the classification, high density residential.
Thanks, you do so. So the future land use, your motion is to make the future land use high-density residential
That's correct.
and the zoning.
So that's a separate motion.
Is that what your motion was?
That's what my motion is. You need two.
Yes, sir.
Yes. The first one is HDR for the,
That's it. I will second your motion. And that's it.
all right. I have your second in that one?
Second, the HDR.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Sorry, I didn't ask for more discussion. Anybody have any discussion on that? All in favor, aye. Y'all said that aye. All opposed? Okay. All right, then let's go on to the zoning. You said that was R3?
That's
All right, I have a motion on that. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Emily. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries on that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Which council do we go to?
Yes, the December 20th meeting. 6 o'clock. There is going to be a special meeting for council on December 20th at 5, but you will be on the 6 o'clock regular meeting. So Shelby will reach out to you and let you know
Okay.
those dates.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure.
All right, and then public hearing 5D has been withdrawn, right? Then our next item will be action item number 6H. Site Plan 2115, request by Jonathan Bursey with Urbanist USA to consider a site plan for a multifamily development located at 802 and 812 Friendship Lane.
Hi. Okay, so this is a site plan approval request that y'all saw earlier in the year. Was that August? September, something like that. And this is let's see, 13.74 acre tract that we're asking for site plan approval that's off of Friendship Lane and Sunrise, in between Friendship Lane and Sunrise. So previously, we brought this to y'all and had to go through the denial process only because we were out of time, if you'll remember that. Okay, so since then, worked with staff, worked with Jason and everyone on a new design, which has 148 units and 114 one-bedrooms, 34 two-bedroom units. The density and all the impervious cover all the requirements, follow the R2 guidelines. And one of the main things that you'll see from the last submittal that you saw is the fact that a lot of units have been taken out and a lot of visitor parking has been put in. So we have the standard drive aisle drives that go through the tract. However, we have a lot of visitor parking that is a part of the plan. We also worked with 911 and the fire marshal and the fire chief on wayfinding signalization that we've put into place. And we've also worked with the neighbor on eliminating a unit that was next to them, a dumpster that was next to them, and everything around them is single story. So the architect himself and the developer put a lot of time and effort into the putting together some renderings, putting together some of the different layouts and such that go with the tract. And so if you want to, I put together a thumb drive that shows those. And so I really think that it's something that I really think this is a good development, and really wanted y'all to see what they're proposing, because they spent the time and the effort to put together the different renderings for it. So Jason, I don't know if you want to start at the...
You want to go to the top?
Yeah, we'll just go to the top, and we can just thumb through that, and just to show what's going on. So the first couple of pictures are the amenity centers that they do have an amenity center that's in the center of the tract, like we showed before. That's going to be for the development. The entire development is for rent, and if you scroll through, you can see just the different materials and things that they want to use and are planning to use on the tract. And then the other thing that those are the interiors and exteriors, and then also the different units that they're proposing to put in, which are roughly 1,000 square foot units. One of the things that we added to the plan that you can see here was to make sure that they had the good wayfinding signage that is going to be in the development, and we worked with staff, with Jason and everyone and 911 to make sure that was there. So I know that was a concern, and so if you're going to the different blocks, the different signage, if you're planning to take a left, you know that you're going to go, B, and you're going to A, and things like that. So a lot of thought was put into that. A lot of thought was put into how to make sure safety and fire were comfortable with it. There's also fire gates that were added, fire truck access gates and knock boxes that were added to the development. So overall, I feel like it's a big improvement to what was originally brought to the P&Z initially. So staff is recommending approval, subject to the pervious paver calculations, which we're happy to do that at the civil construction plan stage, and ask for that approval, and here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Jason?
Yeah, so just a rough breakdown of the project. So this is not very typical of what you see for multifamily developments, but this is not something that's foreign to myself or staff. I would say this product started popping up a year and a half ago. Maybe 2 was the first one that I saw. I think it was down in Florida, and then there was one in Arizona. But they are basically multifamily developments, apartment complexes, all for rent, but they are more designed as single-family structures. Those are separations. There's no common walls. This development has been gaining steam. Unfortunately, not just our city, but most cities, this is not something our zoning regs contemplate. So it did take a little bit of work to work with the developer to kind of get comfortable, to understand it. They did provide us some locations in San Antonio that they've done similar. I did reach out to the planning department there to talk to them about traps or pitfalls or issues or concern. Parking was the number one. And that's because in the first plan, they met our parking regs for the multifamily development. Just unfortunately, the way that the structure operates, it doesn't really work out that way. So in the prior scenario, they met our parking, but because these parking spaces are actually with the unit, when those units are vacant, that parking is gone. It can't be used. For a multifamily, typical, when those vacant units are vacant, that's your overflow parking. And so that is why our zoning code, you see numbers like 1.5 spaces, because they anticipate an economy of scale, some vacancies, and instead of requiring more parking than what they need, that they should, they kind of flow like that. But because these would be cut off and go away, we asked them to add some more parking. So you'll see they're thrown sporadically throughout the development along areas so that folks don't hopefully have to walk too far when visiting their guests. If you look at the renditions or the renderings, people will have to park in their garages because there's not like a typical home where you have 20 feet setback. They're up close. And then this is an apartment complex, so from an aerial view, you look at this, you see streets, but these are drive aisles, typical apartment drive aisle. I think just what most people are used to seeing is kind of either clockwise or counterclockwise flow. You come in, it's building 1, 2, 3. Again, this is a unique product. I think it'll be a popular product because it's different than what we have. Our regs don't contemplate it, so it did take some back and forth. Extremely number of parking spaces, so that's something that staff is probably going to move forward to council and ask them to initiate some changes to our zoning code so we can better tackle this type of development. It's going to continue in popularity. We've seen it moving forward. It's just not something that we've had in this community. But just a simple breakdown of what they're doing. We're looking at about 148 residential units. They're broken down to 114 one-bedrooms, 34 two-bedrooms. They do have an amenity center. Their building coverages are only at 35%. Their impervious coverage is at 61%, but that's the one concern we had. If you look on this image here, the street here or the drive aisles that are in a peach color, these are the pervious pavers. There was a packet, an addendum to yours that had the standard specifications. These pavers have been utilized in many cities. I have experience utilizing them. I've talked with Garrett. Really just kind of depending on the soil and the base and what's going on under there. There'll be some installation changes. But ultimately, the big key for these pavers is the maintenance plan. It says up to a year. My experience with these, it's probably about every 3 months. You get a rain, you get dirt, you get silt, those fill in. And if you don't have that special back truck that comes out and sucks those up, they become impervious rather quickly. So that's why we're making that contingent on civils and approval of that design. If engineering doesn't feel comfortable with that and they deny that use, then the applicant will have to redesign and come back. The other thing, the other condition was there's 2 detention ponds being proposed. Detention area here and a detention area there. No. We don't know the size of those ponds. Again, that's something that the engineers look at during civil construction plan. So they could get smaller and this could get larger and that unit could go away, or this could get wider and this road goes away. I mean, we'll be flexible with the applicant on the site plan as long as the changes to detention and pavers don't trigger an increase in the number of units, but maybe a reconfiguration. We would move forward with that. We probably wouldn't bring that back. Now, if something happens, worst case scenario, and that this has to be redesigned in a new layout, then we would ask that come back just because it's so different than what y'all have seen. Again, we've had many conversations with the fire marshal, fire chief, and 911. This is not a standard apartment complex, so there was some concern with addressing. I think the applicant did a good job of providing the layout. So the entrance of the property, you will see kind of this marquee that shows the layouts, and then at every intersection there will be wayfinding signage that shows which units they go to, and then obviously each building has to be labeled. That's a fire code issue, so that's always our big concern. We can joke about packages and visitors and finding our way, but our big concern is 3 o'clock in the morning EMS call. Like I said, it's probably not ideal situation from what you've seen, but this is not something that's foreign. If you go to big apartment complexes in any major city, whether they're for rent like this or not, you can see this complexity or even more. So from a planning perspective, it's not unique, but just unique to Fredericksburg. So, be glad to answer any questions you have.
Are these all single story?
All of them are single story except a set in the bottom there. There's let's see. There's,
Sunrise?
I think there's 8. Well, 4. Hey, 4. Yes, 4.
Or, and how high, those are 2-story?
2-story, correct.
Yes, this is R2, so 2-story, 28 feet would be the max height.
And then my second question is this something that another city has already codified regulations for something like this?
I think
Is there something we can copy and adapt?
I think there's one city in Florida that's actually working on those. I believe it's Tallahassee, maybe. I can't remember. I did a lot of research on that. So I don't know that there's going to be a lot out there that's tried, true, and tested, but there's definitely places we can start. Again, my first phone call was to San Antonio, the planning department, to see how this was functioning. They didn't really have any major concerns other than the parking was an issue because, again, lack of visitor parking was the key. And so I think the struggle that the owner will have is making sure that people are parking in their garages and not gyms and man caves, and then they're trying to park out on the street. But because again, this isn't going to function as a city street. City streets are 40 feet wide. They accommodate parking on each side with plenty of room for a fire truck. This at 26 feet, the minimum drive aisle for a fire truck is 20 feet. So one car on the road may hinder that. So they will have to do a good job of policing that. If they don't, then Bray will do a good job of policing it for them. So.
And is this something that's gaining in popularity across the country where we need to start anticipating that we need to codify something, or is this something that we think we can handle on case by case?
I would prefer to codify something because we did have a lot of back and forth on the parking. Mr. Bercy was very generous to work with us, but from a developer standpoint, they're looking at the regs and going, hey, this is way more than what's required. So I think we do need to if this was something where those parking spaces were all open and the driveway was a little wider, like what I've seen in some places, I would have been more comfortable with that. But because they're closed off when they're vacant, I had a real hard time with that. So I would like to get some things on there codified, even if it was something as simple as a conditional use permit until we could get our hands around some good codes. That would at least give us a little more oversight on that. So like I said, we've got a lot of irons in the fire on zoning changes right now, but this will probably be high up on our list of things that will come back, springtime, maybe early summer. But this was a product, I think, that has been talked about in the planning world for a long time. I don't know if COVID changed it or just economics changed it, but developers have realized that this can actually money out. And so it'll be interesting to see the evolution of this type of development. It is not gated. There is a knockbox. It's gated for the fire access because we didn't want that second entrance.
Fire exit, Sunset?
No, the fire access is gated here on Friendship because there's some spacing issues. We didn't want that open, but if there was a wreck here and there was a fire, we wanted a secondary entrance. Gated subdivisions require that you go through the PUD process and do its own type of zoning. So that's why we originally talked about naming the streets, but looking through the subdivision ordinance, I was hoping to find something that said private streets could be done, but even our subdivision ordinance requires a PUD be established. So that's probably another note that will make a change to. If a developer wants to do private streets in their subdivision, I think we're all for that. And it may not have to be a PUD. So again, just just things in our code that we're identifying to come back later. But
Can we ask the most impacted citizen in our community?
And it is still public hearing, so if any neighbors want to come to
No,
us.
it's not a public hearing. It's
Oh,
a
sorry.
site plan.
Site plan is,
I'm just curious.
I have a couple of questions.
You do? Can we do that?
Yeah, do whatever y'all want.
Yeah. I just want to see if you had any comments. He is definitely the most impacted person here.
Oh, that's what you,
Yeah. Well, he has a whole book.
File. I'm Tom Musselman, on the Fredericksburg City Council, and I reside at 904 Friendship. On your map, it's the H, the vacant H up there. I've had conversations with Mr. Spraggins. My wife and I have had conversations with Mr. Spraggins and with Jonathan Bursey. This is a good plan. I have some. I asked Mr. Bursey if there were going to be any STRs in here, and he said no. This is not an STR complex. I'm happy to hear that. I would like to draw your attention to two maps, please. Okay. One is the fire map, and then the map that is before that. And what I would like you to do is approve the parking spaces that are on the fire map and not the parking spaces that are on the previous map. Because if you will look, my red right here, okay. My red house is right here. Okay. And the fire map is fire map has 6 parking spaces, and the other map has 11 parking spaces. So if we could reduce, even there, aren't they above their required parking spaces?
Mr. Bursey would tell you well above.
Okay.
Only by 160.
Okay, well, and the only reason I ask that is that's directly adjacent to my rent house on my property, and that big green space that separates the development from my property. So if there's any way that we could eliminate those parking spaces along that line, that would sure make my wife happy, and a happy wife is a happy life. In my talks with Mr. Bursey, they're going to put a fence around it. I think an 8-foot privacy fence that suits us. I think it's a good project. I think that they eliminated one house that was right up against the property line. So when you talk to your water guy, I still have living in that house since 1975. I've seen the water. I still have some concerns about what's going to happen to the water that's flowing down the street toward Friendship, toward the eastern detention pond. But I'm sure that it's going to miss that driveway and not go into the house there. So I think it's a good project. I'm glad that Brenda was able to find a developer with some foresight. We are. I think the race right now on Friendship Lane is to see which project actually turns the first shovel of dirt. And the Seco project's bringing a big excavator out and scooping a little over a 24-hour period does not qualify as turning dirt, in my opinion. So, thank you very much. You guys have done a great job. Thank you.
And Tom, just for clarification, did you want those spaces all removed, or did you just want it to match the fire to reduce one? Yeah, just to clarify for y'all's consideration.
And that still works with the plan. I don't know what is that.
It does take away some of the, there's no guest parking down here. I think there's some up in this area right here. It's hard to see with the label. Kevin, is that correct? Is there still some guest parking on that side? Right here.
It says visitor.
I can see the label. Okay, so I think there's plenty of guest spaces here to cover these units. That would be my only concern, was if these went away and there weren't any there, there's no guest parking. And since those are there, I'd be comfortable with those spaces.
One more thing, if you're worried about parking in the drive aisle, could you alleviate that by painting first red or yellow?
Yes, that is one of the requirements, but as we know, people park in fire lanes all the time. So.
And then, yeah, it will be striped. You'll have your stripes.
So Jason, are you saying that those eliminating all 11 spaces would be acceptable, or are you just saying go from the 11 down to the 6?
I would, since there are those other ones up in here, I would be comfortable with eliminating those. Like I said, there's a lot of parking on this property. I mean, obviously, it's because some of them are associated with the unit, but they are one bedrooms. They're fairly small, 900 square feet to about 1,100, I think.
Yes.
I don't anticipate these being party houses. I have been one before, but I think overall, I think the loss of those 11 spaces wouldn't really totally negatively affect this development. And if it helps protect the neighbor, then staff can support that.
Is the developer comfortable with eliminating all 11 spaces?
Yeah, I think that would be fine, or it's just a couple then parallel. It seems like a flexible point we can work out with
I think if y'all want to make a motion and just say either remove them or get the neighbor sign off, so I think overall the site plan is laid out and we're pretty comfortable with it.
I appreciate hearing that they would not be allowed to be STRs. Is there something we need to have beyond verbal agreement?
So there's nothing in the site plan process. This is not a conditional use permit. We couldn't make any kind of conditions regarding short-term rentals. This owner may not plan it under the current code. If he built it and sold it and the new owner came in, they could have up to 8 units. 8 of these could be short-term rentals under the current ordinances. That's it. Yes, because it's, yes.
I have a question. When do you anticipate breaking ground, and can you tell us what the average price will be for these units to rent?
You're targeting, so depending on the permitting process here in Fredericksburg, we're targeting to have permits by April.
I'm sorry, you're behind, there you go. Thank you. You're behind the podium.
Depending on the permit process.
Depending on the permitting process here, it's our first development in Fredericksburg, planning to get approvals by April, ideally.
Okay.
And then these will be for rent, and we'll be targeting close to $2 a square foot for rent. So these are going to be premium class A plus units. Every single apartment will have purified air, filtered water. We're using a lot of botanical green wall features, we're as progressive a developer as you can probably find here in Texas. So we think it's going to be an awesome, beautiful, low
So
impact.
it's going to be $2,000 a month?
Approximately, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, our thought process is that this is probably a little higher end than what most apartments are. It is a different product, so I think there's going to be a different market for it, which might actually ease up some of our backlog in our existing apartments. We have a lot of folks that newly married but they're stuck in the 2-bedroom typical, and they may migrate over. So we think we'll just kind of shuffle around tenants.
All right, any other questions? Ready for a motion?
I make the motion to approve supplement 2115 with the exception of we're going to eliminate the drive-in parking abutting Mr. Nussman's house and convert it over to a community garden since his wife is.
Can you put that in you got that in the motion?
The only other thing I would maybe add to the motion is, I didn't see it on this plans, was maybe it is in there. Seen many renderings of this. Is the privacy fence highlighted on I think I have seen that one in there.
They commented about it.
No,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, just, if you want to just say that 8-foot privacy fence, we've discussed that multiple times, so if you want to.
Okay. I know we had talked about it, and I think I'd seen it, but since Tom brought it up, maybe.
Well, it's in the regs already. It's on the check, it's been checked.
All right, I have a motion by Jim. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second by Jeff. Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, let's go to action item number 6I. Consider site plan 2121, request by Kevin Spraggan to BEI. Consider a site plan for a short-term rental facility located at 510 East Creek Street.
All right, this one's pretty straightforward. Adding 3 short-term rental units on Creek Street to an existing house. Very straightforward. 6 parking spaces needed, 6 provided. Staff's recommending approval, and I would ask for approval as well.
Jason, comments?
Kevin said it best. To add on this one, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. This one meets our regs. So I don't have anything to add.
Any questions?
Yes, what is the notification process on this? This is the first time I'm seeing it, but have adjacent landowners been notified?
So no, so site plan approvals do not require notification. Anything by right that is allowed, we take forward. So this is a by right as far as if they meet the conditions, then they can do the short-term rentals. If he was wanting to break these up into some type of condominium regime and sell those units off, then that would be something where we would notify the neighbors. But for something like this is just a purely site plan, no notification.
Because it's an R2.
Yes, ma'am.
My concern is just that it's getting pretty dense with some STRs in that area, and so Creek is a busy street, and I'm not comfortable walking on that anymore with my kids. So adding more, just a little hesitant on it, but, so I was curious. And when did they get notified?
What street is that that's showing that crush?
It's right around Elton.
Oh, isn't that Lee Street?
Lee. Yeah. Elton, far side, that's Lee Street, right?
Yes.
Oh, Jason, what is this coming up?
So technically, any site plan that has 4 units or more for multifamily, the way we look at short-term rentals is this would be a multifamily. We've actually had some conversations on whether, the STR ordinance requires 1 space per unit, but the way we interpret them on site plans, we call them multifamily. So we may have to have some conversations on, is it truly 1 space per unit or does it need to be 1.5? Because first your building comes first, then you permit and inspection, but that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother meeting at this point.
So these were going to be long-term rentals. Would the site plan need to look any different?
Yes, it would need additional parking. And that is the disconnect between our STR ordinance and our multifamily regs. So that's why you see a lot of parking changes in our proposed STR drafts. But again, I'm getting a little outside of the conversation.
I don't know.
So basically, our current short-term rental ordinance is acting as an overlay on this piece of property? Is that what we're doing?
I don't know if it's an overlay. I mean, because just the way we've been in.
We hadn't considered these as long as short-term rentals, and we were looking at as pure multifamily. And these therefore would be long-term rentals. Under R2, if we just purely applied R2 guidelines, would the site plan look like this?
No. And so, again, that's a conversation Daniel and I need to have on some things that we've noticed as far as my interpretation of the process. You come in for a site plan, you go to construction, you get your CFO, and then comes the STR permitting process. But this has been the way we've been operating for the last, since 2013. And so I didn't feel comfortable making that change when we have so many of these, but it may be a conversation that needs to be pulled to the forefront.
I'm just observing that it seems like we're getting ourselves a little bit crosswise here because we're not staying pure to what the zoning actually is.
That's been my contention, and I'll use the example of two neighbors, friends, two vacant lots. If someone wants to build a one-bedroom, one-bath house for him and his wife, they have to have 2 parking spaces. If his neighbor comes in and says, I'm going to build a 4-bedroom short-term rental and sleep 20 people, I only have to have 1 parking space. And that's how we've been permitting them and interpreting them. So again, that is why you see a lot of the changes to the parking regs of that ordinance. But again, I think that's a different conversation.
A conversation for another day, but I think we need to clear up some of this confusion.
Yes, ma'am.
I move that we approve it as presented.
All right, I have a motion by Tim. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Jim. Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Action item number 6J. Consider site plan 2122, request by Kevin Spraggins with BEI to consider a site plan for a warehouse facility located at 565 Farm Market, 2093 Tybydale Road.
All right, this one is Tybydale Commercial. Earlier this year, y'all approved a site plan for a Tybydale commercial project, which was on the, you see the handicap spaces there on the west side there? That was the site plan that you approved earlier in the year. We then went to CDs, and if you've driven out there, it's now under construction. So we call this Tybydale East, Tybydale Storage East. And so since that one's full, developer is moving on and has bought this tract and is going to do the same type of storage for commercial, a good dock in the back, which is needed. He's listening to the different tenants that he has currently in his in development, and so that's what's driving this. So again, straightforward as far as storage and warehouse facility, meet all the requirements as far as building coverage, impervious, parking, landscape, and staff is recommending approval, and we would ask that as well.
Thank you. Jason?
Nothing to add on that. Is that it?
I feel we approved it as presented.
All right, I have a motion by Tim, second by Polly. Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. All opposed? All right. That was quick.
I'm all done
I think
now.
we're done with
I'm
that.
going to go home. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for your time.
All right, let's go to action item number 6K. Request site plan 2127 by Stan Klein, the Stanfine architect, for approval of the site plan for the redevelopment of Market Square located at 115 North Crockett Street. Oh, you're good.
All right. Yeah, Steve is part of the team. The narrative, I guess, does everyone have a copy of the site plan? Good. The narrative is described on the cover sheet. You all are very familiar with the drive-through bank. This is the last part of the entire site that would be developed in concert with service of the public accommodation or public use space of the square. Brother John and I started the project, and Steve and I are going to finish it, hopefully. And we've got a great commission that we're working for and client. Andrea, do you want to start off with saying something about its use?
Sure. So we just, as you know, completed the playground over on this side of the square, and we're in desperate need of bathrooms over there. We talked to some parents out there, and They said it's just way too far and the kids aren't making it. So it'll be great to have a bathroom on this end of the square. In addition, the multi-purpose room that's going to be added there, we see that as being something not only to be used as meetings or for events, but also for birthday parties. And the kids can run back and forth across from the playground to the birthday party, and the restrooms will all be right there. We're going to do away with the drive where the access to the square, so the cars won't be driving through right there by the playground either, which will help with safety. So it's going to be a really nice project, and we thank Market Square Redevelopment Commission for working on this. I'm sorry? It's going to move over behind the fire station, over on that side.
Straight shot.
Yes.
You'll see that the service drive is right there, and it'll be rebuilt. The upshot is, we're removing all of the impervious and turning into pervious. We have pavers, we've got large sod areas. We just converted or at least replaced the playground, which we had children waiting with bated breath to use that space. And so now that's the big part of it. But the restrooms themselves will serve, the restroom fixture count far exceeds the requirement by code of that building. It's really for the site.
These are public bathrooms?
That's correct.
Okay. I would like to recommend that we put a plaque on there that says in honor of Lucille Rocks, because she always
I've heard that from Tony.
Bathrooms on that side of the square.
You and Tony. Yeah.
She also couldn't make it to the audience.
Well, the upshot is we've got two plazas that will work in concert with that building. So when you lease that space, and Andrea and her team we're going to be converting that office space into their space, and the exhibitors that rent the space just like at the other end of the square. So the excitement is that everybody that uses that playground, and if they lease that room for a birthday party, they can see that whole wall's glass and they can see what's going on. So we're excited about it.
Is this a funding project? Funds in place?
Yes. We've received the $150,000 grant just here recently, and that put us at just under $1 million, which was the goal. So they're actually a little bit above it at this point.
Andrea, my question is, how many dog waste stations do you need?
How many what?
Think about it.
Yeah, we'll need a couple over there probably. Yeah.
I have a question on the play area to the restrooms. There's that fence right now that goes, is that going to stay there or, okay?
No, it's going
We've been speculating.
No, it's going to go straight across, and it's like 20 feet. So
you'll be able to access the restrooms from inside the multipurpose room or from outside.
You can't see where I'm pointing. This is the playground. This is the entry right here. So you're going to go right across.
No fence, okay.
I think by eliminating that drive, that's going to be one of the greatest improvements to Mark Plotts that's been made in many years. It's a treacherous drive.
Thank you.
It's needed.
Was this prep for your motion?
That is, yeah.
No, just also want to add another benefit is some additional parking spaces up there along the exit of that drive-through. And then they reconfigured the head-in parking, so we'll pick up a space or two there as well. So doing what we can, piece by piece. So good job on Andrea and Mr. Klein on this.
Where's Kelly?
They're going to be in that new park.
Actually, the city renewed the Art Guild lease just for a year, so when it expires in February of 2023, all those offices will be able to move over there unless somebody's found something else before that. But
Across from the limit?
Yes.
Yeah, the Parks Department for sure is going to be moving over there.
Next to the
Chamber. Yeah, okay.
All right, I'll make a motion we approve SP 2127. As presented.
Second.
Aye.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commission.
Good evening. I'm actually John Needham, Joshua Needham's dad. Thank you for your time this evening. And really, we have nothing to add other than what the staff's recommendation is, other than to perhaps provide a little clarification on the staff's note number 3 regarding access. We are indeed working with our adjacent neighbor to provide a shared access easement, but obviously only control one side of that negotiation. So would like to maintain our rights under the annexation agreement to have 3 access points should we be unsuccessful in negotiating that access easement with Mr. Pidwell. Otherwise, we're good.
I don't know that that's kind of the conversations we've had. Obviously, we understand that negotiating access between 2 parties can be difficult. The way staff is looking at it is that, regardless of the cost or who builds it, again, this is probably phase 3. I think y'all said maybe 10 years, something like that. We think the easement needs to be there regardless of whatever agreement they can do. So I don't know if it's, and we'll work, we've been kind of working, the city's been working with both parties to get that done. If my recommendation is that they satisfy all these issues before we record the plat, because that's a big issue. It's not something we'd want to come back with a separate instrument later on down the road. I would say nuclear option, if something's failed through, would be that he provides an easement on his plat, and maybe it doesn't even call out ownership, just it's cross access. And if Mr. Kronwelge's project pops first, then he provides it as part of his plat, and whoever builds it first. It's very similar to what you see along TxDOT roadways, cross access easements. When someone comes into plat and they're the first ones to the table, TxDOT will say, hey, you got to provide a cross access easement. They're maybe not an owner to negotiate with at that point, and they put those on the plat. So that's the stance we're going to take. The access in this area is too critical to leave it for chance. If he gets that access, that would severely limit adjacent properties' access due to our access management manual. So if things fall through the crack, then we would just ask for that easement regardless of the ownership and maintenance. And that way that guarantee their 3 access points wouldn't affect anybody else, and they can move forward with that plat.
Thank you.
I know it's getting late, but do you mind just doing point for point and starting with number 1?
Yeah, so the correct wording on note 1 to read no landscaping or other modifications, that was just, we had some notes on the original preliminary, making sure that those all matched up. Engineering asked for to show the right-of-way ties for Friendship Lane and South Eagle, so they can mark their monuments. We had those on all those plats. Again, there was several plat notes missing from the preliminary plat. We just want to make sure they're all on the new plat. As far as the escrow 0.5, there is some public improvements in the right-of-way that need to be done. There's a sidewalk along Friendship Lane, the southern side, and then I think council also included a requirement for South Eagle. So if they wanted to record the plat before they completed those improvements, they would just provide escrow with the engineering department to ensure that gets done. Parkland Dedication, because this is the plat and we don't know the densities, we're going to collect those at building permit times, and that'll be the number based on the number of units that they're permitting for each part. And then we do need some type of HOA or other entity that needs to be established so that there's a very large detention and drainage easement in that area serving all those plats. There's also multiple service lines for the private infrastructure, private lift stations that's going to serve all of those lots. So if the current owners, after this is built out and they start selling off lots, 20, 30 years down the road, we need to make sure that there's some type of entity that's going to be controlling that, because we as a city are not going to be accepting those private infrastructures and lift stations, should something happen. So that's the other note that we need to add and have looked at. And then again, the access easement. Our preference would be that the agreement gets negotiated, gets signed and gets recorded at the county, and then that is shown as an instrument number cited on that easement. Like I said, nuclear option, worst case scenario, that can't happen. We would just ask for a blanket cross-access easement so that we can make sure that those two properties are sharing that access, so we're not taking away access from one person to another. The city will be installing the driveway apron for that proposed location on ours, because we've installed those for those owners there, and so it's going to modify a little bit. So we've worked out with our contractor to get that done. So ultimately, really, the biggest issue is going to be the access easement for us. Most of the other stuff's pretty trivial and kind of standard things that we see.
I just don't ever recall a site plan coming to us with so many outstanding conditions. And then the second thing is, number 3, since that is a big beast in the room, should that be resolved before we even consider this?
I feel comfortable with it as a condition. Like I said, staff is going to view this, we want them to work it out, but if they don't, we're going to say it's a cross-access easement one way or the other. And so most of these, it is a lot of conditions, but they're pretty minor. I've been talking to their engineer, and he's already addressed most of these, the right-of-way ties. The escrow is not a big issue. So, if something happens and those don't get done, then the plot doesn't get recorded. If something major would change, then we would bring that back just to double check. But I don't think there's a reason, or none of this is too concerning that we would push this out to a later meeting. We want to get them moving. Their civil construction plans are under review, so we want to just kind of move forward with the project.
All right, anybody questions, comments? Motion?
Motion to approve the plot 2135 with staff conditions number 1 through 8.
I have a motion by Jim. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, sir. All right, let's go to minutes, to item number 3.
Correction.
A motion by Jim. Do I have a second? Have a second by Polly. Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Then we have at number 7, any discussion items. Jason?
We talked a lot of issues came up tonight that we'll be seeking council's approval to change and make text amendments. You saw the first house cleaning item was the building height. One obviously is this for rent type multifamily. We'll be seeing that at some point in the future. Obviously, like I said, we have a lot of irons in the fire when it comes to zoning code amendments. The big one is our short-term rental ordinance. So right now, last council meeting, council set the date for January 10th as a special meeting to consider the latest draft. I did get an email today that is probably going to be pushed to the 12th. We're finalizing that, so we'll let everybody know. We'll do our public notice as far as in the PR campaign. We also do email everybody that attended those summer workshops that signed up. I believe with 300 plus, almost 400 individuals sign up. We also email those before every meeting so that they're in the loop, because a lot of those are citizens and they don't, follow the city business, and so we wanted to make sure everybody's aware. So we've been emailing all of those folks for every.
That might just be joking.
Same. But we do have your email, so we'll get you covered as well. So that date may change. It may or may not be due to the national championship game that night. I'm not going to speculate, but we are looking at probably the 12th at 6 p.m. We do need to verify the room. We are going to have some conversations regarding kind of the next steps and what happens when that comes to P&Z. That I can tell you it's not going to be on our regular meeting night. That's just too detailed, too big of a document to handle with our normal business. So I don't know if it'll be a special workshop and then a special meeting, or if it's just going to be a special meeting. We'll have those conversations, and I'll know more as we get there. We are finalizing our last draft. I'm going to be hopefully meeting with the STR Alliance next Monday to kind of go over some of their proposals that we're trying to incorporate into the document. I think some of them we've already got a second draft. And then I want to clear up some of the reasons, some of the things that we're not putting in and why. There's been a proposal to put, sound monitoring devices on houses, but from a staff perspective, when I talked to the 89-year-old lady that's doing the B in her backyard, who has a flip phone, when I talk to her, I don't know that she'll have the capability to get an app and download and get those notifications. So I don't really want to write a code that's going to immediately put someone out of compliance for no reason. So it'll be a chance for us to explain some of these things and hopefully find some common ground on some of the things that we're working on. But
Just out of curiosity, before it's going down the track, I got invited to a conference call last week about the STR Alliance is putting together paying for a economic impact study. But they never said when that was going to come out. Have y'all been given any information about that?
They mentioned probably late February, maybe March. I'm not sure what that time frame is. I'm not sure the scope of it, how far it's going to be. The city's not involved in that. That's purely on them. So I don't know if it's going to be an impact study comparing the two, if it's going to be more of an impact study on just STRs themselves. But we're excited to see that. I think we're moving forward with our draft because I think we've spent the better part of 6-7 months crafting some good compromises that we think between both sides. And so at that point, we'll kick it to council and wait for whatever direction they give us. But the goal is to get something to you. They said at the last meeting they're still shooting for an April timeframe, either adoption or effective date or something like that. So we'll keep moving towards that. And then once that's kind of finalized, like I said, then we'll be back with a whole series of other housekeeping items and changes. So
The workshop you mentioned, is that going to allow for the public input, or is it just a workshop staff?
I think that's something we have to have those conversations about. My personal, professional thought on that is the workshop should be open for the public. They should be able to come and listen and talk, but I don't know that it would be like a public comment section where they could vote and, well, we don't like that and we don't like this, because that's what the P&Z meeting is for. That's the public hearing. In my thoughts, it would probably run similar to the first and second meeting we had, but I might do it more in a format like we did at the park, a little more free flow, a little more slides, presentation, less technical stuff. So that way, because the code is going to be very complex to a lot of folks, and if you're not used to seeing that kind of stuff, for us, it's pretty easy to understand, and so sometimes it's easier to do a slideshow than a technical format and pictures.
What I was referring to is like a joint workshop between us and maybe city council, so we can all kind of get the same. I would really refer to the ones that are going to happen as public entities.
I don't know if we'll do a joint. That's all the conversations we'll have to have. So, I imagine I'll have that direction either before or at the next council meeting. I think from council's perspective, I think they're pretty comfortable with and maybe not comfortable with regs, but I think they understand the document, multiple meetings with them and then individual meetings. So I don't know if we'll do a joint workshop. Maybe it's just a P&Z workshop. We'll kind of gauge council's, thought process, and whatever they tell us is kind of how we'll go.
About the rest of it, but I think I can certainly benefit from a thorough student of the changes, because right now it's it's a big, but I don't understand the impact of it.
Well, then maybe even after the adoption, how we're going to have to deal with it.
Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Are we the ones that are going to do the analysis and the recommendations, or are you going to hand us the final version that the council has seen and hasn't officially approved, but what they really would like to see?
I think I'll probably get some direction from council at the next meeting. The really only big kind of direction question we had was caps versus cups and kind of the differences there. So I would probably just put a staff recommendation in there, you know, hey, this is what it is, explain it to them and come back. So
that really doesn't answer the question, Jason.
I wish I could answer it for you, sir. My thoughts is that what's going to happen is you're going to get a staff draft and recommendation. I don't think council's not going to go through it line by line and say yes, this or that. But that'll be something that y'all will do, just like a normal.
We're the ones that are supposed to pick it to pieces if it's going to be picked to pieces. That's right.
Okay, that's why I mentioned to you, I would like to see it first come to us. If it comes to us in a workshop format where you can present it and we can discuss. We're not going to vote at the time, but at least so we can get into the details.
Just better explanation.
And understand it all before we get to that point of having to make a decision.
Okay, I'll let them know, and like I said, we still have to have those conversations. In the meantime, I would suggest come by the office, meet with me, because sometimes it is either easier one-on-one to focus on things that we can spend a little more time getting in depth, but I think I'm getting outside of the scope of my discussion here, so.
Do you recall the firm that the STR Alliance is going to recruit to retain to get their study?
I don't know that it's a firm. I think it's an individual who consults.
TXT, I think it's John Hawkinyos is the principal guy.
My experience has always been that you can hire if you got enough money, you can hire anybody to tell you anything you want to hear.
Well, the thing is, for STRs, there's platforms out there like TDAT and all that can give you a pretty good idea of what the spend is once you're looking at on the units that are happening within your destination. So, and that's pulling straight from short-term rental platforms and everything.
And I did attend that after being invited to that Zoom meeting, and this gentleman, I couldn't remember his name or anything, we just has done this for several jurisdictions, this specific.
40, I think. I heard it's 40 different.
Yes, exactly. And
140 different what?
40 different cities that he's done this for, not contracting with the city, but in 40 different cities.
Not exotic locations either, locations pretty much.
Okay. Well,
Do we need to talk about Jill? Or no?
I'll probably give it to all of you.
So yes, Jill had to, I got her letter of resignation today from Planning and Zoning Commission. Talking to her, she has moved outside the city limits. She's in the ETJ. Sounds like it's fairly permanent at this time, although she did say she moves a lot, so we could see her back on at a later date. But at this time, she is off. She has resigned today. So.
I've spoken to Eric Parker, who has been on our historic review board, and he has agreed to take her seat if so requested.
Well, we're going to probably start advertising some point next week, taking applications, probably PR, press release, advertisement in the newspaper, and then we'll go through and grab those, and then we'll have to take that to council for their appointments. I know the gentleman that originally requested, I believe he's a former council member, wanted to be on P&Z, but they decided to put him on ZBA, and he didn't want to do that. So I still have the ZBA opening, so he may be interested. So we'll see what happens in the next few weeks.
Oh, we probably have, but I think history will show that we try to home grow our own from junior boards and people when there are vacancies in other boards. You go to who you have on staff volunteer-wise first and make that known to them and let them make some.
You call it HRB a junior board?
Well, whatever. But the point is you're trying to home grow them.
Yeah, no, if y'all know people, they can download an application off our website now, or direct them to me or Shelby to get that. We'll be glad to start taking that. You know, the quicker the process, the better. I'd love to get someone on before the new year, although that might be a little tight, so.
All you have to do is approve Eric Parker and you'll be here next time.
I don't get to approve that, so.
Next Monday here at 5:30.
Yes. Same.
So, my apologies, if I may, I actually need to extend an apology to you guys. We did properly notice in the paper for the public hearings that we had in the November meeting, but I did not send out the proper notifications for the 200-foot notifications for those items. So hence us needing to meet again to go through the proper process for that. So my apologies. I'm the reason why you have a second meeting in December for all of the zoning items that we approved in November. Yes, sir.
All the public hearing items.
I'd like to have my pay double for.
Yes, sir. Tripled even. What this was good.
You need to be asking for the December 20th meeting, okay? Are we going to be fed?
Dinner starts at 7:30 on December 20th.
No.
The 13th?
Oh, I'm talking about B&Z.
That's the 13th, no. You mean the 13th meeting?
On Monday, if y'all would like dinner, I could probably find some money in my budget. Some PB&J.
I know.
You see, Daniel, I'm thinking more like beer.
What did you all decide about who the chairman may be for that meeting, since Janice is not going to be here?
I have not actually had a chance to talk to Daniel about that, so I'll get with him and get back with you on that.
Now, next question I need to ask is this. Next question I want to ask is this. Is there any reason why we can't open the meeting, explain why we're there, and say quite easily, we're going to go through this as if we have all approved it. We ask the public if there are any other comments or there are any other changes. And if there aren't, we go through that thing fast.
I don't think we can open it up like that because it would have to go through the normal public hearing process.
I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is letting the audience know that if they've got anything to say, they better say it. Because we're going to go through it lickety-split.
I can definitely make that statement, but again, they're going to get their 3 minutes for each one.
Yeah.
It's not all of them, not all of them. Just those at zoning.
Just the zoning item. There were several zoning items.
There was zoning, there was some CUPs, there was an annexation.
There was 50,000 motions, as I recall.
Yes.
So I will keep my staff report short.
The other thing that I think we need to have is the official set of minutes for that meeting, delineated precisely how it needs to be.
We will have the minutes, and I will probably in my staff report update what the result of that vote was, because some of those did have some conditions on there.
I understand that. But if we're going to do this over for the third time, then let's try to make it easy on ourselves and understand that everything that we would possibly do in that third meeting, we've already have it hashed over twice already. And all of it has been approved, so long as there are no changes that come from the public.
No, there's no changes from the public, and our conversation was, we held the public hearing. It was a notice issue. Theoretically, we could move forward and be okay, but if someone did challenge up to 3 years, I believe, and we just didn't feel comfortable leaving the applicants out there with that kind of liability. So that's when I reached out to them and rescheduled and talked to all of them. So, but my staff report will be, thank you. My report's on file. I'll ask any questions if you haven't, because we have done that again. So I won't go into a lot of detail other than what the request is.
Now, do we have the ability to call out what's in those minutes as our motion?
You approved the
If it's a public record already, can we not call it out and say this is what we moved? right here. Or do we have to read it, Daniel? Which we can.
It's hard to say without me having the minutes in front of me to read, an example, but.
If they're written like they're supposed to be, you ought to be able to do that.
Right. I think that, for me, the important thing is that you just ensure that you're not sort of rubber stamping without considering, the new public hearing. So if you can get to that point and you feel comfortable with using the same motion, as long as it's clear, I'm okay with you referencing something.
All right, so this is from the November meeting, Shelby, or the October?
The November.
So is there going to be any, I was not at the November meeting, I intend to be at the Monday meeting. So is that going to be an issue if you have someone who?
And if you'd like, you guys have a copy in your packet tonight, but if you would like for me to go through the minutes and take out only the excerpts that you'll be using on Monday.
Didn't have it. I did not either.
Yeah. Okay, well, I can definitely email this out to you, and if you would prefer, I can pull out only the sections that you will be considering Monday night.
That would be great. That would help a bunch.
And then maybe denote in there the conditions of any.
Oh, yeah. They're in the motions.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Any special things we dreamed up that wasn't in.
There were a few, but they're definitely in the motions. I can send those your way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Move we adjourn.
Motion by Tim, a second by Polly. Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. All opposed? All right.
I'm coming early to get a couple of chairs.
I have to admit, I stole your chair. I gave it to Emily.
Lazy boy.